Alright, guys, and we're live here on the Wrestling Rewind show number 20. What's it, 27? 27, yeah. Show number 27. That's crazy. We're really getting up there now, Dave. So, how's your week been, man? How are you?
Oh, it's a great day for wrestling, everyone. How y'all doing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, we're not going to talk about it because it's too early, but it would be remiss for us to not mention what's going on. So one of the reasons why we didn't do From the Dark this Friday was because Ian was said for us not to do it, based on what happened in the UK and Ireland with the wrestling stuff and the independent stuff. And he was he's friends with a lot of guys there, so he can't believe what's going on. He wasn't in the right headspace. So look, we are going to do it maybe like 2 weeks down the line when he's feeling it. But look, everybody's rocked by what's going on here with this stuff. And if you know Ian, like, he's a big UK wrestling, obviously wrestler fan, but also he knew all the guys there, and it's a big blow to the system, big blow to everybody. So that's why we didn't do the show. Why we're not going to talk about it now is because, one, we don't want to. We don't feel, yeah, it's a bummer, and it's still too early to know what's going on. Obviously, anyone who is like convicted or it's proven, and obviously we believe the women coming forward in this, but if it's a case of it's proven in that, and it's without a doubt, yeah, these people should be, the book should be thrown at them and never work again or go to jail and all that kind of stuff. But right now, we want to kind of just wait and see, and don't want to make claims and aspersions with people purely because, like, one, we're not a wrestling media show. That's not what we
Yeah.
do. We're a review show from stuff that we like, and we just don't want to talk about it. It's still too early. We're not in the Brocken news business, so it's not our gig. There's loads of places that are talking about it, and go and check them out. But for most, we made a decision last night. Hey, look, we're not going to talk about it. So obviously, when there's an update and when this is all kind of ironed out, we'll probably mention it. But this is not the time nor place to do that. So sorry, guys. That's just how the cookie crumbles. What we are going to talk about is something way more fun. Well, The Undertaker retired, apparently. We might get to that. But the meat of the show we're going to get into is one of my favourite pay-per-views of all time. And it's one that, for some reason, isn't talked about. And I think I know exactly why it's not talked about. It's because you've never seen it.
Yeah.
In America, it was just one of those things. This was like of its time, like very much of its time. Like, it just couldn't happen now. But this period.
No, it could not.
No, it could not. Like, loads of things could happen. I told you it was fun. I told you it
So
was
much
fun.
fun. So much
Um,
fun.
but what I mean, even from like the logistics of it, this whole show exists in a vacuum, but also doesn't, because it ties into everything that's going on at the same time.
And
So
that's the best pun Darragh will make for the entire night. We'll
uh,
get to that shortly.
but what's cool about this period is, in particular, I love the fact that, like, for me, this is like, these 3 months are like ingrained into my brain, and they're so important. Like, I think every wrestling fan has those moments that are like ingrained, and this is one of them. From SummerSlam to Armageddon 1999, I know every single play, move, moment, episode of Raw, all that kind of stuff, because it was such a really weird time. Like, everyone says the Monday Night Wars kind of ended in 2001. Not really. This is kind of when they ended, because this is when WWE really changed, and you see a lot of, like, they went from struggling to victory lamping, and this is one of the big angles where they started doing it. Like, even the way they had this stuff formatted out. So we had SummerSlam, which we will talk about at some point because that's such a great show. Then we had Unforgiven, which we will talk about because it's such a bad show. Well, we kind of talked about it with Kenneth from Hell, and then we had this show, which is literally took place like a week later. and then it built into No Mercy. So it was a show that was in continuity, but also wasn't. And that's why I wanted to talk about it. One, because like most people, I've never heard an American take on this, and I've never heard anyone really talk about it. Even OSW Review, I don't think I talked about Rebellion 1999. If they have, let me know, because I would love them to talk about this. But it's one of my favourite shows, and I just think it's great. Like, it's so of its time, but it's also not. Like, I don't know. The set design is fantastic. I love Michael Hayes on commentary. I love how...
Yeah, that stuck out to me too. I was
Right?
super surprised.
Isn't it
Yeah.
super great? And just the weird kind of presentation of it, with the weird table that isn't the announce table, the pyro that isn't the pyro, the
Great
stage.
pyro though.
Oh,
Still better
it's
pyro than we
so
usually
good.
get. I'll say
It's so
that.
good. Like, it's one of those shows that when you go back and watch it, it sticks out to be like a mix between an actual pay-per-view and a house show.
Yeah, that was the vibe that I was getting. I was trying to figure out exactly where this fell. And like you mentioned, I had never seen this show. Now, granted, as we get into the topics of the show, this was during a time period when, I was 10 years old. So
Yeah.
my parents would see the product and go, yeah, you're not watching this.
So you had good parents, Dave.
Yeah.
Or at least oh no, my parents are great, but me and Gary have joked many times when we're doing the show that how did our parents let us watch this? Like, I like, for context with this show, right? This was one of the only shows that was on during the day for us. This was a Saturday night. I'll never forget it. It was a Saturday night. It was like over at like 10 p.m. And it was weird because you'd order it on Sky Box Office, and everybody would come around and watch it. Like, all of us as kids would come around and watch it. It's like, this feels really weird because we don't get this ever. This was just never a thing. But yeah, our parent, like, we've joked many times that our parent, we don't know how we were allowed to watch wrestling. Like, honest to God, like, it's really bad. Like, some of it is just like the whole Jeff Jarrett thing. If that was today, cancel culture rung and won a mutt, like, like,
Oh, it absolutely would.
that's how they
And
opened the show.
I gotta say, like, vacuum technology, I did not realize has come so far in 20 years.
Yeah, I don't know. I love how much of a heel he was, and remember, this was on his way out. This was just before he was about to leave. So for anyone who doesn't know, Jeff Jarrett was the Intercontinental Champion, and he was literally on his way out of WWE to WCW. Now, he would lose the belt a month later to China, and then that would be it. In a good housekeeping match, which is an atrocious match. But his whole gimmick at the time was being like an uber misogynist, and it is very distasteful, but that's the point, right? It's like, you don't sit there and go, oh, sure, isn't he great? It's like, no, you're horrible. You're a horrible, horrible man. But that's the gimmick.
Yeah, the point you're not supposed to like him at all. And actually, I mean, he was basically doing a not as well performed Andy Kaufman gimmick.
Yeah.
From the 70s or 80s, whatever it was. Like, that was what Kaufman used to do. Go around, like, demean the women in the crowd, try and get them into the ring to, like, prove that they could hold up to him. That was, the whole intergender thing, which was absolutely pure brilliance. And I think that's what they were trying to capture a little bit with this angle. Unfortunately, the quote-unquote fan who came into the ring couldn't sell a figure 4 leg lock to save her life. No, but that's okay.
That's okay. She tried.
That's okay.
And that's the main thing, right? She tried.
She tried.
But yeah, I thought that was the worst part. But this is something that Jeff Jarrett was doing throughout this whole time period. This was his big shtick, where he'd pull women out of the crowd, he'd invite them in, and then slap on the figure 4 leg lock. That was his kind of thing, because his big feud was with China. Now, the weird thing about this is, like, this would continue. China would end up winning the belt and have a feud with Jericho, where Jericho would end up taking over that role. And that's what a lot of people seem to kind of forget. Like, Jericho ends up being that kind of stand-in for Jeff Jarrett, But like Jeff Jarrett had a massive role in this pay-per-view. Like,
That shocked me. I had no idea he was going to be involved in so many storylines and matches. Was he like super over in the UK and I wasn't aware or something? Not over, but like super popular there or something?
I don't recall. I don't recall. And there's
Like,
one thing, I'm going to have to upload this later to YouTube because our YouTube isn't working at the moment, but Twitch, Periscope, and Mixer are. So I will upload it to YouTube later. Sorry, guys. But yeah, it wasn't that he was super popular. It was that, I don't know. I think it's kind of hard to know what's going back. And I think if I got to talk to Jeff Jarrett again, I might actually ask him about this whole time period. Because I really should have and wish I did. But I think it was more he knew it was on the way out and he wanted to kind of use him as much as he could. But to start off the show, where he had a really good match with D'Lo Brown, like it was a very competitive. That was one thing about these matches. While they weren't the biggest matches in the world, none of them were bad. And I always loved D'Lo Brown as far as like an in-ring performer. I thought he was always great. So to have him in the ring there with Jeff Jarrett, I think they had a great feud, a nice little 6-minute match. But then he kind of came back and then, had a not so good match with China, which ended with British Bulldog brutalizing China with a running power slam. So,
right, yeah. D'Lo Brown took me by surprise in this pay-per-view. Because every time he tried to go to, whether it was TNA or coming back for the Royal Rumble, his reception was never that great. But at this time, when he was actually active, the ovation was massive that he got from the crowd.
Like, that's the thing, when you're watching the crowd, and it's one thing that, I don't know, whenever I watch these shows, I'm just so energized by them. Because the crowd is so into it, and it's so enjoyable. And even if some of the stuff in the ring is either bad or it's just purely distasteful, you're like, well, the crowd seems to like it, so it's okay.
Yeah, the crowd's not in it for themselves like they seem to be nowadays. They're not trying to get themselves over. They're just enjoying the product.
Yeah, it's like, even though it's a time when kayfabe obviously wasn't real, everybody knew it was fake, everyone still went in with this like childlike innocence to it, where they were like, oh, we're into this and we know it's a show and we're going to fully give ourselves over to it being a show. And I think that's what we've lost now in the post-internet, everyone being offended by everything, post-PG era kind of stuff, where it's like, right, this couldn't be done now because either, as you said, it'll be hijacked by people who want to get themselves over, or WWE wouldn't do it because, they couldn't. Like, and now, one thing that shocked me on this as well, that the actual women's match, well, it wasn't great. It wasn't bad either. It was a 4 corners match. So what's weird about this time period as well, like this specific...
Did I fall asleep? There was a women's match during this?
There was a 4 corners women's match, yeah.
I genuinely have no notes about this. I took notes from the whole show. I have nothing about a women's match. I don't know how I missed it. I don't know if I went somewhere. I don't know what happened.
It was 3 minutes. Don't
well, there you go. I must have gone to like the kitchen or something.
You probably did. And this is what I mean. This was still a time period when women's wrestling was still a bathroom break. It wasn't as bad as it would become, but it was still a competitive thing where the belt was still being actively defended. But that's what I mean. Like, 1999 is a really weird...
Are you sure there was a women's match? And you're not just talking about The Godfather?
I literally watched it 2 minutes ago. It was there. I'm looking at the notes now. Luna Vachon came out. Like, come on, dude. How did you forget Luna Vachon was on the card?
I think it's my old recapper's brain. Just a women's match
it's
block.
Off.
I don't know what happened. Oh, I'd be remiss if I did not mention. I have the logo behind me if you're watching this in video.
Isn't it cool?
But the opening little video that they did was a bit freaky compared to what's actually going on in the world today. The same symbols, cars being turned over in streets. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I watching?
Well, the title is Rebellion. Like, that is...
It is, yeah.
And then they also had another one called Insurrection, which was never as good as a title. Like, I'll be honest with you, whenever what's going on in the world it's kind of weird. But
it was just really weird vibes. I was like, they could literally be using footage from today and using it in me. This is just...
Well, I don't
know. Every 20 years, right? We always say every 20 years.
Right. But this happened in October, so we're a little bit ahead of the curve there, I suppose.
Oh, well, then we have great things to look forward to.
But one thing I will like, as I said, whenever I would like make even today, whenever I get SmackDown versus Raw and I go to the customs creations, I always make sure I have a Rebellion in my universe, because like that's how much I love it. Like two pay-per-views I always love, and they're two of my favorite shows that they don't do anymore. Rebellion and Cyber Sunday or Taboo Tuesday. I think they're just really cool. Like, and not because I have a emotional attachment to Rebellion, I'll be straight with you, but I just think for what it was and for how they did it, I think this is the perfect way to have a pay-per-view overseas, where it feels like a pay-per-view, but it's also not. You know, like nothing really big happens, but it's not a waste of time. Like this show wasn't a waste of time.
No.
You know? Also,
and it wasn't super long. It was only 2 hours and like 20-some minutes.
Yeah, it was grand.
It was perfect.
It was grand. It had like a nice breezy through it as well. It wasn't killed to death by gimmick matches. It had my favourite steel cage match of all time. And
yeah, we'll get to that at the end of the show. That was really solid. Yeah,
we will. But like, it had so much in it that if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's on the network. It's very easy to find, and you'll really enjoy it. The Chris Jericho Road Dogg stuff was weird, because this is a weird time period for Chris Jericho too, because he debuts at SummerSlam, has a really cool promo, has one of the best. No, he didn't debut at SummerSlam. He debuted on Raw, but had one of the best pay-per-view debuts on top of the Ken Shamrock's Lions Den against the Road Dogg, where he calls it Summer Sham. And if you haven't seen that promo, it's fantastic. So he sets up this like feud with the Road Dogg and X-Pac and Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock disappears at some point, and his last match is with Jericho on SmackDown. It's a hardcore match. And then you never see Ken Shamrock again, which as a 10-year-old I was very upset, because I love Ken Shamrock. And yeah, and then he just ends up in this feud with the Road Dogg for some reason. And it never really did anything for me. I think this was kind of like they were putting him on ice. Apparently he was supposed to do a little bit more than what he would end up doing, but then he fell into the China thing, and 2000 is when he really took off. So this is a weird period for Jericho. I also forgot about Jericho's floozy that he came to the ring with, Mr. Hughes.
Oh yes, good stuff. Good stuff.
What? Floozy?
Floozy, yeah, floozy. That's the. I mean, there were a lot of great lines in terms of ways to describe things. I think I wrote down my favorite line of the night, which was by Jim Ross during the Godfathers thing, and it was, and I quote, "Oh my, hoes aplenty."
God. Oh, like, yeah, we'll get to that.
Just hearing it come out of his mouth, I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
We'll get
and that, like I said earlier, like when I saw that, that's when I went, "Oh right, this is why I wasn't allowed to watch."
Yeah,
this
no, we'll get
stuff.
to that. I have a lot to say about that specific match, because, yeah, we'll get to that. But I don't know. Road Dogg is always entertaining. I think this is the best run of Road Dogg's career. This again, SummerSlam to Armageddon, where he's doing a lot and he's having a lot of fun and he looks healthy and he's quite good in the ring. This is a brilliant little time period. I love this. This is like, for me, this is my favorite period of wrestling. Those 4 or 5 months. I think it's just everything brilliant with it, you know. There's some good stuff happening in WCW. ECW was still there, and then you had WWE just doing really, really entertaining things. And presentation wise, setting stuff up in unique ways. Even in a show like this, like, that's why it's so weird. They do a major angle halfway through the show where British Bulldog is freaking out about not having a title match because The Rock screws him over on SummerSlam, on Raw the night before. And then he picks up a trash can and throws it, like, just freaks out and throws it at the wall, and it hits Stephanie. And that sets up more angles and the rest of the night. Also, this is during the middle of the referee strike, which is a carryover from Unforgiven, where all the referees were sick of getting beaten up and he went on strike. Stone Cold Steve Austin ends up being the enforcer in the stick pack challenge, and that's what happens. This is post that, when all the referees have more authority and you see them not be bullied around as much as they were. So It's
I mean, unless you're Tim White, in which case the Godfather will flank you with his hose,
well, he looked like
and you will be smothered to the ground by them.
well, he looked like he had a good time, so that's.
I don't think he was complaining.
No, I don't think he was complaining either. But let's talk about that match. Right?
I think we have to. You know,
We have
I
to.
forgot that I forgot Gangrel spit water the way, or well, not always water, but
wasn't water.
I forgot that he like spit the same way that Triple H did.
No, he.
It was weird to see on the same show. Like he did it from the ring apron up into the air.
Well, he did it from the corner.
He did it from the corner, yeah.
Now, okay, do you know Gangrel's gimmick? Do you know what it's supposed to be? Because I only found...
the whole vampire in the blood, and I got that.
No. It's a very specific thing that I only found out when I got into the source material, right? So,
okay.
A Gangrel is a type of vampire from Vampire the Masquerade, which is a game and a role-playing game. Like, you know, Vampire the Masquerade is one of the best RPGs you'll ever play. Get it on GOG now. It's fantastic. But it's also like a role-playing game, and Gangrel is a type of vampires. Now, here's a weird thing. If you ever look at any games that Gangrel is in, or even on some episodes of WWE television at this point, you'll see a little thing underneath it saying Gangrel own property of White Wolf. White Wolf Entertainment is the people who own Vampire the Masquerade, and that's what that's a reference to.
Huh.
Yeah, I know, right?
I had no idea. I mean, this doesn't change my point about him spitting from the corner, but that's really fascinating.
Right? I know. I figured this out, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is crazy.
So this is kind of like, well, not on the same staggering level, but this is kind of like when the WWE came up with an agreement with Marvel Comics so that Hulk Hogan could be called Hulk Hogan.
Yep. And also, well, and in those comics, Hulk actually beats Hulk Hogan, so that's how they got away with it in one of the comics.
I mean, that's not kayfabe. I don't believe it.
But yeah, so that's what happened. So a lot of stuff that Gangrel does is based on that, with the blood bats and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he spits. But his one kind of makes sense because he's a vampire, right? And blood bat was his thing. When Triple H does it, it just looks cool. So I never really saw the conflict between the two, to be honest with you.
Oh, there's no conflict. I just did not realize there were two people on the same card doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Nowadays they would be like, no, don't. You got to have something different.
Exactly. No, that would.
Who did it first? Was going to be my question to you, because you are the historian of all things Triple H.
I think Gangrel did it first.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Gangrel did it first, but again, Gangrel's one was very specific. It wasn't a way to hype himself up. It was an offering.
Right. Gangrel did it from 5 feet in a different place in the ring, guys, so it's totally different.
No, because it's supposed to be an offering. That's the thing.
No, I know the character motivation. I know what you're saying. I'm
so
just being very reductionist.
Now, one thing that really did annoy me, and I kind of laughed a little bit. You know, instead of having the cool entrance up from the fire, obviously they didn't bring that with them, so they just have some candles and he walks through them, and you're like, that looks pretty crappy. Like, you know, it's like, either do it or don't do it. You know what I mean? It's like, don't have candles. You're not Aleister Black. And they don't even have full candles. They have like 3 of them, and you're like, lads, this looks pretty poor. Like,
I mean, they didn't even start the dry ice on time.
No,
and you're going to complain about candles.
He just shows up and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go do my thing."
He's standing there, and all of a sudden the smoke comes out from under him. You're like, "Oh, bad camera take."
Yeah, you probably should have pre-recorded that, but sure. Look, the match itself was fun, but then the pre-match was really the story here, where Godfather's cutting this unbelievable promo of Gangrel, and Gangrel's like, and he's like, "Hey, usually I would offer you one of the hoes, but," which again, sorry guys, he literally used the term hose here. Like, this is not us. You know, this is not the words we have chosen. These are the words that WWE have chosen for
yeah,
for
if
these
we're
ladies.
listening, you gotta, guys. If we're going to cover things from a historical perspective, then we have to talk about them as they were at the time.
Exactly.
We can't get all trying to correct thing. Look, the guy had a hoe train. We're going to call it a hoe train. It was what it was.
Yeah.
Obviously, nowadays we would call it a very polite ladies stampede or something. I don't know what the hell we call it.
What I love about it, I forgot his finishers, and like Michael Hayes is going through his finishers, and he's like, "You got to be careful for the whole train because that sets up the pimp drop." And I'm just like, "This is ridiculous. This is just ridiculous." Oh man, I don't know how he held it together, because like, obviously Michael Hayes wasn't the commentator all the time. He was just there.
Right.
I don't know why he was there. I really enjoyed him on commentary, I have to say. But
Great color commentator. I was very impressed,
he's
actually.
really good. I thought him and JR were really good. But just listening back to that, I had to do a double take. I'm like, that whole sentence is absolutely ridiculous. Like, and again, it's,
there was line after line that I could have written down just out of pure joy of what they were saying, with completely straight faces.
Yeah.
The host surrounded them around the commentary table. They couldn't get over. And Derek's laughing at me. I'm trying to get through this.
And they did
these are normal sentences.
Yeah, so they did a little dance, and he was like, "Come back," and you're like, "What is this?
What is this?"
And then you're like,
somehow this was still less tame than Jerry Lawler making comments about the Divas on the way down to the ring.
The difference was, like, with this, it was kind of, I suppose, fun. Like, no one was really demeaned compared to, like, compared to what King would say, where he just demeaned people. And you're like,
no.
There's a difference, because I suppose this is all in good taste and everyone's having a good time. But with King, you're like, you're just kind of being creepy, dude. Like, you know.
Kind of being creepy. And since I've been doing Diva of the Week, my Diva of this week goes out to the blonde in the red thong bikini. That's my choice. I don't know her name.
Actually,
I don't know how to find her.
There was one shot in it where it was just like, it just cut back and it was just all the girls just in thongs, and you're like, oh my god, why did my parents let me watch this as a 10-year-old? I was like, what is this?
I know.
It's like, I was 10. What is this?
I used to think that, like, the Beautiful People's entrance or Melina's entrance or all of those are crazy.
No, they were nothing.
But the WWE did not care.
No.
When the Ho Train entered the ring, I mean, you want to talk about a bent over, messed up camera angle. That shouldn't. I was like, what am I watching?
Yeah, you're like, this is crazy. And then you go back and you look at why the censors are freaking out, and you're like, you know what? You probably had a point. Like it was
probably did.
It was pretty out there, you know. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a fun thing to see, and it's like completely of its time. But you're also like, wow, they really pushed the boat out here. Like, this really, really far, like really far. You can't even see the boat. I love
the Godfather shouting out into the crowd, like, where are the pimps at in here, and on the whole crowd chanting back. Now, I have a question.
Yeah.
He was the Godfather still at this point, right? Because that's what he was referred to as commentary the entire time.
It was.
I don't know if this was changed just on the network as a voiceover, but when he was introduced to the ring announcer announced him as the Good Father, and that caught me off guard. No, so I don't know if that was a post edit or what.
No, I didn't catch that, but no, he was fair. Like, the right to censor weren't even a thing yet. Stevie Richards,
exactly. That's why I was like, what is going on? That's not who he is yet.
No,
that's because he himself, as a human being, later would have issues with the character that he used to play, and all that.
Like, Stevie Richards was still running around with his floozy, the Blue Meanie, at this point.
Floozy, the night of the hose and floozies. That's the title of today's show.
I blame Hunter Golden for bringing that in. I just think that's the best way to describe any kind of, like, lackey that they have. It sounds better than lackey, floozy.
Yeah, well, there's so many terms we're apparently not allowed to use after this week anyway to describe it. So we'll go with floozy.
But yeah, no. So if that is in the so if that is a network edit, that's a grievous one. Here's another one, right? And it's one that,
I mean, that, or I did watch this at 1:00 in the morning, but I believe I heard that very distinctly. I went, that sounded really out of place.
Yeah.
And he wasn't referred to that at all for the rest of the time.
No,
I love how the crowd, like, this is one of the things I love about the crowd before they were in it for themselves. You know, at first the Godfather comes out by himself and gets booed. And I'm sitting there trying to remember, like, okay, why is he getting booed? He's not the heel right now. And then he turns around, invites the Ho Train out, and the fans go wild. And I'm like, that is so funny. Like, that's what I want out of wrestling, just some fun.
But that's what I mean. Like, it was fun. You know, like, again, well, you know, obviously we were watching it as children, so we didn't know what these things were. We just kind of were going along with it. But, like, I suppose being in that crowd, it would be fun because you feel like you're part of the show, and not like in a horrible in for yourself, you know, kind of thing. More like, this is a big pantomime and we're all having a good time. And that's what this whole show felt like. You know, it was a UK show, UK crowd, which, you know, I've been lucky enough to go to the UK many times for wrestling shows, and it's always a great time. Honestly, they're super fun, and yeah, it is what it is. You know, it's a snapshot of the time that I wish we were still in a lot of ways, because
because Darragh wants to be surrounded by hoes and floozies, obviously.
I don't know. I just think there's a lost art here with like managers and valets and stuff. You know, like there's a bunch of them. You know, you had Mr. Hughes, Miss Kitty, and the whole train, and it was just like, you don't see this anymore. Like, they're just lads coming out doing moves. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at the actual work rate of the people in working here, the matches weren't great, but they were a hell of a lot entertaining and lots of other things you'll see nowadays. That's the truth.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that a bit earlier, and it's a good point to touch on, is that there was consistent storylines that played through the entire night that connected to things. Like when there were run-ins, when there was interference, it didn't seem, oh, this is super random. Why are they doing this? Sense. It was, oh, I get this. Like you're furious because he interfered. Think
about it, right? The show started off with Jeff Jarrett, right?
Yes.
And China was involved in that match in some ways, right? Then the backstage segment with China, she had a run-in with the Bulldog. The Bulldog interfered in her match, and then would set up the stuff that happened with Stephanie, and then that would end the Bulldog coming out with Triple H and The Rock's match. So,
right, and not to mention China was also with Triple H, so it even tied together that way.
So the whole show made sense, and those kind of overbooking, it wasn't overbooking, because it was literally telling a cohesive story. The story of this show wasn't the matches as such, it was more the British Bulldog wanting that title match, and that was the story of the night.
And this is one of the things that we talk about when it comes to having 30 writers versus having 2 writers or 1 writer. They could actually tell, like you said, a cohesive story, but they could tell something that kept you engaged for the entire show, where a match that I might skip over, I watched because the things happening would somehow relate to what was going on later in the night. I mean, the styles of the matches were certainly different. It was a lot more basic. In terms of the actual move sets and whatever, a lot more brawling focus, I would say, and a lot more mat wrestling, actually, which was cool to see. But you're not going to, if you want high flying moves, I mean, you got more out of Kane than you probably did out of anybody else.
Well,
but that's not what this show was about. This show was to tell a specific story.
X-Pac and Jericho were probably the 2 best workers of the whole thing, of the night.
Yes, you know, it's. Sometimes I have lenses on when it comes to X-Pac because I know so much about him.
But he's such a good wrestler at the same time, you know.
So he blows me away. He's really so good,
and he was getting reminded, so ahead of his time as well. And that's the big thing about X-Pac. Whenever you're watching him, you're like, man, he really was good.
Yeah,
you know.
No, it wasn't just I'm involved with the clique, so I deserve to get a push. No. You legitimately were a great wrestler, and we haven't jumped to that match yet, but I got to say, the pyro. I love the DX pyro in the ring. When the crotch shots that then chops that then set off the X's that go into the air. I mean, so fantastic. Can you imagine how much fun that would be as the performer to be doing that and jumping into the air and having pyro going off around you? And it's like when I'm at a big rock concert and people think I'm weird for doing this, but it's just something that's become a habit of mine where I'll end up turning around and just staring at like the crowd for like 2 or 3 minutes just to try and soak in like what are the people on stage seeing when there's 20,000, 30,000 people watching them. Like it's such a cool vibe to experience.
That's what this now obviously before the pandemic, we're not going that's unfair to say, oh, it's not the same. Of course it's not the same. But what I mean is it's this rock concert vibe doesn't exist anymore. Even at a WrestleMania. Like, think about it. If WWE had this crowd at WrestleMania, they'd be like, oh my god, this is unbelievable. They're so into it. But now it's like, oh, okay, yay. You know, there's nothing to get these people going. And what I love about it is, you know, with the pyro, it's consistent throughout the whole show. My favorite pyro actually is Jericho's pyro just before he enters. It's like one of the best uses of it. I don't know how they did it or who they got in to do it, but it feels more grungy. Everything about the show feels kind of grungy in like a good way.
Yes.
And it's more kind of, you know, it kind of feels like an ECW show with money. And that's kind of what I like about it. It's shot differently. The production of it is very, very not WWE-esque. And then the pyro even itself is more kind of like based in, look, we're in Birmingham. This is a rebellion show, so let's do this differently rather than this is a WWE show and it doesn't matter where we are. Like,
I even love the opening pyro in the ring. There's so much stuff that they don't do anymore, and I don't know if it's for safety reasons or
it's money, dude. Money.
No, but I'm not, even when they do all the money and we see the fireworks going off around the stadium and stuff, like I miss having the pyro actually in the ring itself.
Oh, on the
you know what I'm talking about, like the pipes that go up.
Yeah, the turnbuckles.
Not Kane stuff, but yeah. Kind of like the DX, but like they would do it. I'm like, man, that's stuff that I miss.
Yeah,
because it was so much more incorporated. We always say it's money, but then they'll start doing it again in another week. So I don't know.
It's like, I think the problem here is WWE knew what they were.
They had an identity.
Yeah, they knew what they were. They knew the brand. They were like, we are, you know, as I said, like, it was edgy, but it was its own kind of edgy. It wasn't trying to be ECW. It wasn't trying to be WCW. Bits of it really looked like WCW, particularly Jericho. Jericho, I forgot how much the WWE production on SmackDown and Raw hid how WCW he still was. On this show, when I was watching his match with Road Dogg.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's weird. It's just because I've watching it as an adult, I've never really kind of gone back and done the comparison, and it just kind of hit me when I was watching it. Whatever way they shot that match, it just looked like I was watching him in WCW again. And I can't explain it. It was just really weird. It was the ring gear he was wearing, I think, and just the way it looked. But you would never see that on a WWE television high cost pay-per-view, where obviously they'd shoot a little bit different, so the ring gear he wore wouldn't be a factor. But it was just a really weird kind of experience to have. That's what I mean. The show felt very much like a different show. It didn't feel like WWE, and that it's huge advantage.
Yeah, he did take some unique bumps. There was one he took where he went like neck first from halfway around the ring into the ring ropes. I was like, oh man, like he's going all out. Like, no, and I don't mean this in any sort of whatever way, but I mean, the dude's up there now. That he's just doing things he can't do now, and it's so cool to see him flying around the ring 21 years ago and just remembering. I mean, that's what I love about this is you get to see the guys that are, well, they're the legends now. They're the Hall of Famers now and whatever, and it's cool to see them in their prime and in their peak.
But you see, when you're watching it, like, remember, in a lot of ways, this is their childhood, which is also weird.
But I didn't see this so much. I mean, this is my first time ever seeing this pay-per-view.
Yeah, you didn't see it, but I did. It's my childhood. It's my childhood. Let's put it that way, right? And it's And go back and watching it, it's like, even without the big names like Austin and Taker, this is still one of the strongest pay-per-views that you can sit down and watch on the network.
Look, I love John Cena, but it's laughable to put him in the same category as The Rock.
You can't.
Even just watching this pay-per-view.
Like, with The Rock doing and I'm not a Rock fan in the ring at all. I really do not like The Rock as a wrestler. As a person...
No, he does his punch. What's there to like?
Yeah, as a person and as an actor, I actually really like him as an actor.
Oh, yeah.
He's great.
Absolutely.
And I'll watch any movies in. But and same with Cena. I love Cena as an actor.
Oh, so you're the one person buying a ticket.
I will watch anything with John Cena, and I think it's great, to be honest with you. But look...
No, I mean, I love The Marine as well. I'm with you.
I'm not talking about The Marine. I'm talking about even that Bumblebee movie or Blockers. If you haven't seen Blockers, watch it. It's fantastic.
I've heard really good things.
It's really good.
But before we move on, because we've already kind of moved on to the Jericho and Road Dogg and cover that, but there was the Val Venus match happened before that.
Right.
And maybe you skipped over.
I skipped over this one because I'm just like, there's nothing to talk about. All right, go on.
Well, there is though. When I was watching it, it was the only promo of the night where, because I know Val Venus is a really down to earth kind of guy nowadays, and would be cool to talk to because it genuinely seemed like he hated the lines that were written for him. It sounded like he didn't want to deliver them. It sounded like he had no investment in the character they were trying to build. He just really seemed to hate what was written for him, and that's really stood out to me, actually.
But here's the weird thing about it is he might have hated it, but the crowd didn't.
The crowd loved it. Yeah, that was so bizarre. Yeah. It was the most nonchalant, non-energetic delivery of lines I've ever heard to get a massive ovation.
But like, this is the thing. Everyone on this crowd, on this card, every single person that you can talk about was over here. You know, that was it. It was actually unbelievable when you think about it. You know, and I don't know. The only person actually who didn't have a character here was probably Tori. That was it.
And I'm going to pretend I remember that match.
No, like, as I said, you know, I don't even know what her character was. I couldn't tell you. But every other person, even Miss Kitty, was great. Like,
yeah, it was very well done. Yeah, it was bizarre because we talked about how they're, like, telling a story and there was themes tonight. Well, there was a very, very solid theme that happened for the first half of the show before the British Bulldog happened. And that was violence against women. That seemed to be the recurring theme of the night. We had 3 matches or gimmicks in a row where either it was violence against them or portraying them just super sexually, which I was like, what's happening? This is weird. But then it culminated in, as we were talking about, Stephanie McMahon accidentally getting hit with a garbage can. So it actually had a payoff. Even what we would consider nowadays the offensive stuff had a payoff that would then go on to play a factor in the story of the entire show. So even if the writing seemed weird, it was still very congruent.
Like, and there's no real way to defend that. You can't.
I mean, that was my best attempt at saying it was written well.
And it was written well. Like, as I said, the Jeff Jarrett stuff was designed to make you hate him. I don't think anybody there liked him.
And then you had the Godfather.
The Godfather being the Godfather, which
and then you had Val Venus.
And Val Venus.
You know, it was like 1-1-1-1, and then British Bulldog hit Stephanie. I was like, oh, okay, that's where they were going with this. It makes sense.
It made sense. Like, this is a different world. It's a different WWE, 100%. And like, when you're looking at this kind of stuff, remember, they were really writing into this Jerry Springer world where, you know, this was just car crash TV. But even still, taking those elements, they were still able to construct a card that told a story that held together. Not only held together, but did 2 or 3 transitions to build to the main event. Like, as I said, from the very beginning, you knew what you were going into. And even the way they did the commentary there with instead of just telling you, oh, hey, there's a match coming up, they're like, hey, don't forget, you know, we have a title match coming up. This is a big deal. Here's why it's a big deal. Compared to now, where it's like, the big dog will be up next. And you're like, what the hell does that mean? What are you talking about? I did enjoy Chyna dressing down Cole. That was really funny.
Oh, seeing him as a backstage interviewer is it's absolute gold because he just comes across as the perfect little dweeb.
Yeah,
he plays his character great. He's very does. Josh Matthews-esque, actually. I think
that's what they were going for.
Yeah,
I think that's what they were going for with Josh Matthews. They just kind of, Josh Matthews wasn't as good in that role as Cole was.
Yeah,
and
who? But, I mean, I like him.
Oh, yeah.
I've always been a long-time fan of Matthews. I was kind of sad when he got released, but I mean, there's better, unfortunately. He's very, very talented, though. I'm not taking anything away from him.
I'm going to try dig out the interview I did with Josh Matthews a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When he started with TNA. So I'll try to find out. Like, the worst thing about having all these having that back catalog of shows is that I don't know where they are, and I didn't know them properly. So if there's so much good content out there that I'm trying to find or get back, and I also wiped my hard drive by accident of all the old shows. I managed to get a lot of them back, but I have to actually go through it. So if I can find them,
accidentally wipe your hard drive.
No, I actually didn't. No, what happened was I was getting off topic. I was fixing a laptop for my friend, and when you're making a boot drive for Windows 10,
Yeah.
you have to obviously put the USB stick in and that. I hit the wrong letter. I realized too late. Wiped the 4 terabyte hard drive.
That'll do it.
Yeah. And
That's the downsides. That's the downside to the convenience of how easy it is to do certain things. But since we're wildly off topic and talk about Windows 10, I am furious that they force installed Microsoft Edge in the latest update, and there is no way to uninstall it.
No,
you can't
cannot.
do it through Control Panel. You can't do it through PowerShell. I spent 20 minutes Googling yesterday, how do I get rid of this? Only to eventually find that people are like, you can't.
Yeah,
There's no way.
No,
it's just embedded in your system.
But
good luck.
What you can do, guys, in order to get around all this tech censorship and spying, you can install the Brave browser from the link below in the description, and that really helps out the show because any little help towards the show really, really helps. And it doesn't cost you anything, and it's free, and you actually get money from it as well when you use the Brave browser, thanks to its cryptocurrency that you get for free, because no one owns your data except for you. So use the Brave browser, folks. People keep ringing me. I don't know what's going on, but people want to ring me. Yeah, Brave browser, folks. That is the browser that I use. Is what we use for Nerd to Know Media exclusively. So
it's almost like I knew there was a segue that should be made there for a little plug there.
There we go.
It's almost like I connected some dots.
It's like we planned this out.
It's like we know what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Kane versus Big Show was the next thing that really caught my interest. And I gotta say, it was nice to see them wrestle before I'd already seen them wrestle 1,000 times.
This is when it was still new, because around this time, this is when they were still doing the Brothers of Destruction. No, not Brothers of Destruction. It was the Unholy Alliance.
So even before. Okay, yeah.
Taker was actually injured here. Hold on 1 second.
But what I loved about this is, I mean, Kane and Big Show, sometimes you forget because we see them 20 years later, and that's the memory you kind of keep in your mind. But they were incredibly athletic for their size, especially the Big Show.
And Kane and Big Show. They were really, really good.
Goodness.
Like, here's the thing, right? Big Show had debuted in February of this year in WWE, so he was still relatively fresh. Kane was around since 1998, but he was actually experimenting more with the going to the top rope. He was just after getting tag team with X-Pac. So him and X-Pac were against the Unholy Alliance of Big Show and The Undertaker before Taker got injured. So this was about 2 months after that. And this is...
and they were still talking about that storyline during this match. They were explaining Kane's moveset by saying, hey, this is because he's been training with X-Pac. So this is what the moveset is. And, then with Big Show, they're like, oh, we see the influence from The Undertaker. So I just loved the way that they connected everything.
Yeah, like that was it. They just, like, the true lines of the show were just unbelievable. And that's what we're missing now. Like, we might get a reference to a storyline that happened a couple of years ago. But we won't. Like,
you won't, because it will contradict everything that has happened since. Unfortunately, there's no continuity.
The only time that there would be is when Undertaker comes back, and they'll reference something, But that's because he's not there week to week. Like, you'll get a reference to he had these battles with like Ric Flair and Mankind and stuff. But if he was there every week, you wouldn't get reference to it. But now sometimes you get something that happened last week, and they're like, oh, it didn't happen. No,
they'll straight up just pretend
that just didn't happen.
The finish of the match I thought was really cool. It was a throwback to the Hogan Andre match at WrestleMania. It was just a simple body slam pin, but seeing the Big Show slam like that for his size, even though Kane's massive, I love that. I thought that was very well executed.
Well, what I love about this show as a whole is that it really built up the spectacle of everything. Even the throwaway matches, because there was the first half was very much setting the table, and then once they kind of, I think it was after the Jericho match, they really kind of leaned in to a more big fight feel. So everything here kind of felt bigger. Even the triangle match was weird. It was just a weird match in general. Crash Holly,
weird and fast.
Here's the thing though, Crash Holly and Christian wrestled twice on this card, and Jeff Jarrett wrestled twice on this card.
And China wrestled?
She
was involved like 5 times.
She's involved like 5 times. So that's another thing that you wouldn't see nowadays. You wouldn't see people double jobbing, just cause. Because remember, the roster wasn't massive either. It was a great roster, but there was this much more sense of, we are a team, we're all in this together, and you're going to have to pull your weight maybe a bit more than normal. And
the last time I can really remember this happening was in, I don't know, what are we talking, 2014, 2015, with Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
And they used to have him wrestle 2 matches a night every week. And the fans seemed to get really upset about it. And, especially once he had to retire, because they said, well, you purposely ran him into the ground. Yeah. You purposely overexposed him to try and ruin him and all this. Well, none of that worked. No. Because the fans loved him so much. But I think that's why we won't see it again, because of Bryan getting injured.
But see, I don't think anyone here was overexposed. There's a difference between having someone out there and going, right, go out and wrestle 2 matches. Why? Oh, cause. Rather than go out there, have your match, warm up the crowd, and then be involved in something else later on. The Christian Crash Holly stuff was kind of pointless because we didn't see it. But it was probably to get people riled up in the crowd. Everybody loved Crash Holly. The actual match itself, the triangle match, wasn't great, but the backstage segment where Crash Holly and Hardcore Holly were trying to figure out stones and kilos.
Stones and pounds,
and it was just really good. I'm like, this is fantastic. And little things like that were really nice. It was just, I wish there was a hardcore title match here. That would have been nice. But there wasn't.
Of course you do.
Yeah, come on. It was the only thing that.
Of course you do. But hey, I mean, they still weighed in at over 800 pounds.
Allegedly. Right. So in the 12 minutes we have left,
yes,
let's talk about the main event. And by the way, we don't know if the Undertaker has retired yet. We're going to talk about that next week when we're talking about the Last Ride series. So just everyone chill. If you guys think he actually retired, let us know in the comments below. I don't want to weigh in on that yet because everything's a work, and this probably is too. Yeah, we'll talk about that next week.
We will talk about next week, and we'll talk about why no one other than me could be any more excited by the way that documentary ends.
Yeah.
By the reason that the Undertaker had to have one more match.
Listen, he's going to return, and it's going to be against Sting.
I'm not going to weigh in. 2 seconds later, this is the match. This is his opponent. I just love the whole concept of, okay, I've retired. Wait, I can have a match with AJ Styles. Yeah. Okay, I'll do one more. Yeah, that got me going.
And then what'll happen is he'll be like, oh, I can have a match with Sting. Like that, let's do it. But look, we'll see. We'll wait. We'll talk about that next week because there is so much to break down. We're going to give everyone the chance to go watch it. It's on the network now. Yeah, I haven't seen it myself. So
I've only watched the first episode, so I'm very excited to see the rest of it.
So we're going to talk about that next week. Now, straight off,
the best cage match ever. Let's talk about it.
Well, it kind of is. In my opinion, it's my favorite cage match ever. It's the old black cage, which you never see.
I like it more than the old blue cage.
I hate the blue cage. I hate it. Yeah. It looks manky. The black cage looks great. It's the same one they used from St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
And the only problem with this is watching this on the network, they absolutely abuse this footage because it has there's two songs from this time period. Fear Factory's album Obsolete was used in Fear Factory's Obsolete and System of Down Sugar was used Unforgiven, and that's the best video package of all time. I'll post it in our group on our page so everyone can see it. It is the best video package of all time. And on the network, they've removed it. The second best video package of all time is from this. And it has a song by Guantanamo Apes called Proud Like a God, which is a phenomenal song. On the network, they took it out. And it's like, why did you do it?
Don't want to pay the royalties.
Pay the royalties. Nobody's ever heard of that band. They're not doing anything at the moment. Buy the song.
They can use it. Why not help them out? One of the things I loved about this cage, for whatever reason, it seemed like I could see through it. better.
That's it.
Like
that's
if I was,
it's the mesh cage you can never see through.
And this seems more realistic to
Real.
what you would get. And if you're in the audience, I feel like you're not as hindered as you would be normally.
Like I've seen the mesh cage in person. The TNA cage is actually more like this for house shows. It's way better. And from a crowd perspective, you're more engaged. It's more. I think the black cage makes it more personal as well, because it does kind of add that grunginess to it. But I would imagine watching this in the arena, you're able to see a lot more what's going on. It feels more like when they hit off it, it makes more like of a oomph sound to it. You know, you don't have to pad it or add sound effects to it or even mic it up like you would the other cage. I don't know. This just feels more legit. It feels more like an actual hate-filled feud than oh, hey, we're having this match. And that's what I always feel when I'm watching the normal cage. I've never felt that cage brings anything to the table. I always feel
it looks like it hurts more too.
Oh yeah, well I imagine it would. Like they're bars.
They're bars versus like the mesh. So yeah,
like
and
the mesh is cool.
It didn't come down from the ceiling.
No,
they just come out and assemble it. I like that because it allows you to have a cage match as a surprise on a show instead of walking into an arena,
see the cage,
seeing it up in the air, and going, "Oh well, I know one of the matches is going to be a cage match tonight." That is one of the things I like about house shows.
I think that's a cool idea. That's something they should do. That's something they should bring back. You know, so like have the bars.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But like, hey, guess what? We're having a cage match. There's no cage here, but there is, and then they come out. That's something they could do. Like, this is the thing about WWE. They have no creativity anymore, man. Like, they don't think outside the box. It's all very controlled and by committee, and that's not how creativity works. I'm sorry, it's not. Like, we love wrestling, and this reminds me why. But then when you look at the current product, you're like, if you're a bit more creative, and I know you can be because you're doing it now with the cinematic stuff, but week to week you could do stuff like this where you're like, you know what, cage match, boom, assemble the cage.
I think that's an absolute great idea. And I much prefer these cage rules over modern day cage.
They make way more sense. They make so much more sense.
Pinfall, no submission. I would even take out the whole door nonsense. I've never understood that. And just make it you have to go over the top rope.
The door is okay.
Top.
The door is okay.
You like the door?
I don't like the door, but it makes sense. Like what I would do, I would padlock the door. You know, if I was in a cage match, I would padlock the door as like you're not getting out.
Oh well, no, that's what I mean. But I'm saying in terms of a winning condition, I don't like that you can escape the cage through the door as a winning condition. I think you should have to go over.
Yeah, I'd agree, but I think it does kind of work. Like, but the pinfall and submission is kind of stupid because then it's matching the cage rather than a cage match.
Right. And not having a referee in the ring is great.
Yeah, it looks because it's like they're wild animals going in and killing each other. You know, it adds to that believability of, oh yeah, this is actually supposed to be a wrestling match. This isn't supposed to be like, they're not supposed to be friends. And what I love about this is why this is one of the best cage matches of all time is, even though the end of it is a bit of a smudge, it's a really, really good 17 minutes. You know, like The Rock and Triple H absolutely go out there and have a phenomenal match. Like as much as I love Austin, nobody wrestled Triple H like The Rock.
Oh yeah, I mean even The Rock's opening promo where he's standing on top of the cage.
I love it. He looked like $1 million bucks, sold everything, more over than any of the guys currently on a promo before he did anything. You know, it's like, and I feel bad now for the guys of modern WWE, because it's like you can't get that again. Everything is kind of working against you. You know, it's like, how can you?
You could stay off Twitter. That would be a
works.
good way.
I think, to be honest with you, as much as I enjoy Twitter, sometimes it's kind of, as we talked about with J.K. Rowling, it's a good idea to just stay off Twitter sometimes because you end up putting your foot in your mouth. But what I mean is, like,
expose yourself less is really what I mean. I mean, unless you're working with The Godfather, expose yourself less to the public.
Yeah, well, I think it has to mean something. And that's the big thing. Wrestling doesn't mean anything anymore, like, as such, outside of big events. Which is why when the big stuff hits, we're almost surprised because the big stuff hits, rather than everything's supposed to matter. And on this card, everything mattered. So when it got to the main event, it's like, holy crap, this is a big deal. And it felt like a big deal because they hyped it.
There was
the whole
momentum.
night. You know,
Momentum throughout the night building up to it. As we talked about, you had the British Bulldog, you had Chyna, you had Shane McMahon, you had Stephanie. All these factors that you're like, how we know these have to come into play in a no rules cage match. How is it going to play out? I've seen this for you already knew, so I was sitting there like, okay, what tropes are they going to use? I'm probably going to get upset about this. I didn't.
No.
Was it a dusty finish? Absolutely, but I thought it was executed phenomenally well.
So, and look, I knew when I brought this up to you, I was like, he's going to love this. Like, this is one of the best shows. And I was hoping you hadn't seen it because it would have taken away some of the surprise of how good this was. But look, as I said, my favorite time period of wrestling is these 4 months. I love these 4 months of wrestling, and even as a person. Like, the music alone, when I discovered Fear Factory and all this, and System of a Down, all kinds of stuff, this was a huge shift in wrestling and in that kind of pop culture as a whole. And to have something like this, which just kind of catches all that in a little jar through the prism of wrestling, is fantastic. Guys, if you haven't seen this, go and watch it. You'll have a great time. I have a VHS copy. That's the best way to watch it. But sadly, sometimes you can't. But it's on the network. I still have my VHS copy that I taped from Skybox office when I was 10.
Wow, that's so cool. Did that have the pre-match on it, the pre-show match?
It didn't have the pre-show match
because the network didn't. So
it has all the original audio and stuff. So it's one of the only. It's one of the only original tapes that I kept. I have that, Unforgiven, and a few others, I think, from that time period. But yeah, that's it. You know, and look, we've reached the end. Dave, that was the fastest show I think we've ever had. Flew in.
It was fun though. I think we covered the show pretty well. I think it's a nice review of Rebellion.
1999.
It's so weird to see it, man. It's so weird to see this imagery. So weird.
Well, look, guys, if you haven't seen it, do. If you're listening to us on Phoenix 92.5 FM, thank you so much for joining in. Go over to nerdtoknowmedia.com. Check out all the shows. Nerdtoknowmedia at gmail.com is how you can reach us. Go on to the Wrestling Rewind Facebook. Chat with us. Leave comments below if you don't want to do any of that. Myself and Dave will jump in and have a discussion. What did you think of the show? What do you want to talk about next? Well, we are going to talk about The Undertaker's Last Ride, but until then, Dave, is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter, Instagram. It's all the same. The Dave Stevens. If you guys are watching on YouTube, Twitch, that's what's in the little gray box down there. And just be safe, everyone. Just be safe.
Exactly. Stay safe in this crazy world where we don't know what's going on. But one thing you can be sure of is that we're going to go back to the past and remain the only wrestling podcast by people who do not hate wrestling. So we will see you next week here on the Wrestling Rewind, guys. Stay safe. Bye-bye.